Hello, everyone. Michael and I are really excited to be linking up for a chat with Steve Judd, who is a professional astrologer with decades of experience. He offers an alternative approach to astrology, focusing on self-understanding and personal growth. His YouTube channel provides free resources, including videos on astrology, learning material, and information on readings and his books. Steve's ethos is based on the transformative potential of astrology, leading to a more compassionate and empathetic global community. He encourages his viewers to learn astrology as a means to promote kindness and understanding in the world. His ethos regarding astrology very much resonates with us and what we do, delving into who we are, why we are here, understanding our relationships with others, and our patterns of behavior throughout our lives. We teach astrology and Reiki face-to-face. We look at clients' mundane and galactic astrology and offer psycho-spiritual counseling, tarot and oracle readings to encourage people to heal themselves and to be the best version of themselves in these turbulent times. Welcome, Steve. How are you going over there?
How are you, Steve?
I'll tell you, my trip to Tasmania, meeting up with you guys, amongst other things, was just one of the highlights of this last few years for me. It was great. And come back and I feel really stimulated by it. I was amazed at how, in certain ways, how similar Tasmania is to the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
I
is
can see that.
very much so. I'm originally from the UK and it just feels so much like being in the UK, everything about it. Yeah.
And I'm from what is known as the mainland, the big island.
Yeah, I get the impression that Tasmania is actually quite different to the rest of Australia in a number of different ways.
Yeah. So we're going to ask you some curly questions.
Fine.
We know a little bit about you because we spoke to you a couple of months ago. There's some things that people probably don't know about you that might be interesting to bring up, if that's okay with you.
You can, but I may choose to just bring in the rule of omerta, and in that I'm not going to say anything that might incriminate myself. But...
So you're not just an astrologer, an experienced astrologer. You're also a little bit of a stand-up comedian.
It's funny you should say this because this last weekend I was in the west of England and I just thought I was in the city of Wells. I was working in the big cathedral. It's a 1,000-year-old cathedral there. And myself and my partner just said, we need to get out of here. So we just drove to the seaside and we found ourselves on the west coast of Somerset. And I found myself thinking, oh no, we're in a holiday camp. We're in holiday camp land. And I suddenly realized that I was in exactly the same place as I was when it was the birth of my alter ego, my evil twin brother, the caustic astrologer. I was at a psychic fair at this big holiday camp about 20 years ago, just doing readings and doing a little talk on astrology to about 20 or 30 people. And there was a really big event going on in the big holiday camp, a world famous psychic, and her support act pulled out at the last minute. So the organisers come and grab me, says, you're good at talking in public, up on stage. So I was like, okay. So I got up on stage and for about 2 or 3 minutes, I tried to educate about 3,000-4,000 people in the subtleties of astrology. And then I quickly realized this wasn't going to work because they were all drunk and they were party goers from some of the more cosmopolitan cities of the UK, like Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow. And they weren't into the esoteric. They just wanted to be entertained. So they started sort of heckling me and I thought, right, well, I'll heckle them back. And then I started realizing that I was on something here. So I started insulting them according to their sun sign. And that was the birth of the caustic astrologer. And from that, I developed this kind of stand-up comedian thing based on astrology. And it works best when I'm in with a crowd of drunks, because in this audience, there was gangs of women with pink Stetsons and gangs of guys on their 8th glass of cider, So I just couldn't hold back. I just let rip. And from that, I developed a whole new persona of my evil twin brother, who still comes out on average about once a year when I let him out. But as I get older, I've not tried to refine it, because it's the crudity that makes people laugh sometimes. But the basic tenet of it is that astrology is seen as such a serious subject by so many people. Yet if you can't laugh at yourself, then
Yeah.
what's the point of studying anything?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really
So
good.
did you happen to do the transits on that day that you did that
No.
first?
Or
You
if I
didn't?
did, I don't remember them. I don't remember them. But there is a video platform called Vimeo.
Yes.
Yeah.
The video of me doing the first stand-up comedy is out there somewhere.
All right.
Oh, I might have to
It's,
try and find that.
well, good luck on finding it. I've got the password somewhere, but I will republish it eventually.
Yes.
Sounds good. So we might start with our first question. So how can astrology help people on their journey, on their life journey?
Ooh, how long you got? But through studying one's own horoscope, you get an objective, detached, and impersonal perspective on your own self-analysis. It gives you a way of looking at oneself that is not nuanced by anybody else's feelings, emotions, or thoughts. It is truly objective and impersonal, and unnervingly accurate most of the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what is the role?
Carry on.
Sorry, you on. I was going to say, what is the role of astrology for humanity, therefore, in these times? What do you think?
Well, I'm often quoted as, for 40 years I've been saying, astrology were taught in schools within astrology and psychology were taught in schools within 2 generations. We'd see an end to warfare, racism, and misogyny. And now I find myself in a position of being able to teach large numbers of people astrology, courtesy of Zoom and the internet. And also I'm actually working with a number of different teachers to get astrology on the curriculum in various schools. Admittedly, not mainstream schools, more Steiner schools, Montessori schools, and schools in different countries. But I'm working with a number of universities, not unfortunately in the UK, but in different countries, who are interested in the history of astrology and where it comes from. So it's slowly becoming more and more of an academically accepted subject without losing its spiritual value.
That's fantastic, because if young people, if children can learn astrology, then they're going to be able to help themselves more. They're going to be able to understand themselves more easily, rather than waiting until things happen on their journey that aren't so pleasant or fortuitous.
And then they'll also have the ability to be a better comedian.
Yeah.
Well, indeed. Yeah, I just remind the viewers that whilst astrology is an alternative way of seeing the world and seeing oneself, it is not 100% accurate. It's only as accurate as the people translating it. And there's one of the oldest sayings of all in astrology that goes back tens of thousands of years, is the planets impel, they don't compel.
Yes.
The world is split into those who feel that they're here for a purpose and that they're following their path, and that's fatalistic. And there's others who believe that they have choice and free will. And I'm firmly in the camp of free will. I can choose to go against what the planets say. It normally means I struggle more, but I can choose to go against it. So
that's right.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. So have you ever thought that you're not of this world? having studied other planets and astrology, do you get the feeling that maybe there's other connections that you have?
I used to think I was from Arcturus, right? Used to.
Yeah.
These days, what's happened is that I studied theosophy when I was younger. I read all of believe it or not, I actually did read all of Helena B. Blavatsky's books. I can't believe I did it because it was just so.
That's a job. Yes.
Oh, massive. I'm never going to do it again. But Blavatsky bought from, when she was in India, she came back to the UK and she brought with her elements of Eastern astrology, particularly this thing called the North Node. And she brought with it the translation of the North Node as having to do with karma and reincarnation. And I struggled with this for 40 years. And I thought, well, I don't buy into this. This is an Eastern thing based on the fact that 90% of people are born into poverty. And the best they can aspire to is if they live a good, virtuous life this time, perhaps they'll have a better life next time if reincarnation exists. Now, I don't do reincarnation because there's already more people alive on planet now than there ever has been in the whole of history put together. So linear reincarnation doesn't work for me. Homeopathic, where you've got droplets of this life and droplets of that life, is a potential. So I had to redefine the meaning of the North Node for myself. And I chose to redefine it as a different denoting mission statement and purpose and reason why you volunteered to come to planet Earth in the first place. And with that philosophy, I then realized that if that's the case, and I truly believe it is, I choose to believe it is, then that knocks the idea of death on the head. But there is no such thing as death, just a transition of consciousness. And if there's no death, then there's life before birth and life after death, just in different dimensions of existence. And the more I've got into this idea, the more I've realized that there's the idea of being from a different galaxy or a different planet or a different solar system is old thinking. There's a multi-dimensional holographic universe out there, which we're all connected with. And we're all part of, and we're all kind of star seeds. We're all remaining atoms of hydrogen and helium from the Big Bang. So we all are connected, and there is no such thing as death. It's just that whilst I'm here in this three-dimensional continuum, stuck in this in this physical body, I'm not in a rush to die, but I'm quite looking forward to it because I know that when I've done it, I'm going home. But it isn't a planet, it's a state of consciousness where I get a much broader and bigger overview of the large scale plan.
We sort of hypothesize also. Yes, it does. We sort of hypothesize to the existence of multi dimensions at once, or multi times that exist coherently in different dimensions at the same time. So what you're saying is quite true to what we feel as well. And I myself have read the other, not all of it, I didn't read the whole thing like you did, but a whole lot of the other Staley or the other works that came from the same source. So I know how you feel about Helena. Big writing, yes. So when did you really get started with astrology? What did you decide? Did you just wake up one day and say, astrology, I must look at this? Where did you start?
I was in the UK when I was 15. The only way to leave home was to join the army. So I joined the army at 15, and then the army decided they didn't want me when I was 20. But during that 5 years, apart from teaching me to grow up and look after myself and stand up for myself, the army ran a lot of intelligence tests on me and realized I wasn't very good at shooting rifles or driving tanks, but I was very good at encoding and decoding, particularly with non-Latin alphabets like Cyrillic, for example. So when I came out of the army in 1976, 75, 76, around 1976, 77, I found an ephemeris, and I looked down the lines of planetary places for each day, and I thought, well, there's patterns there. This is pattern recognition. And I never thought anything of it for a few years. I just looked at it, oh, that's astrology. Oh, that's interesting. But then in 1979, someone gave me a book that's still on the market today by I'm sure he must be dead by now, an American astrologer called Martin Schulman, and it was on the North Node, the moon's nose, the north node. And I read this book and I thought, how does this old man who's living in New York know so much about me, and how does he do it? And that was the actual moment where I thought, well, if he can do this, I can do this. And and then I realized that astrology is different to any other type of esoteric or divinatory art, because all the other arts were based purely on intuition and the abilities of the translator, whereas astrology is a true mixture of art and science, in that it's got geometry and mathematics and intuition and psychology. And if you haven't got all four of them, you're not going to be able to do astrology properly. So to me, the maths and geometry is parallel along with, and the pattern recognition in those maths and geometry is right there with the intuition and the psychology as well.
Yes. I used to have that book. I'd had a couple of books of Schulman as well. But who are your go-to authors when it comes to astrology books? Who really has rocked your world in that sense?
Let's have a look at your bookcase.
There's him.
Oh,
of course, yes.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
I've heard of that guy.
I've met him, actually.
I did have hundreds of astrology books. I'm down to about 20 now, and some of them I've never opened.
I understand. You're there too.
The ones that have got a really bent spine. Obviously, I've got a 40-year-old copy of Planets in Transit.
Yes,
signed. I've got
a 30-year-old one.
I've got the Book of World Horoscopes by Nick Campion. I've got Astrology, Karma and Transformation by Stephen Arroyo. The book I recommend to anybody who's starting astrology is by a woman called Sue Fairbrother, F-A-R-E Brother. It's called Astrology Decoded. She did the MA in Cultural Astronomy and Astrology at the same time as me. She's passed now, unfortunately, but it is the definitive teach yourself astrology textbook for the 21st century, Astrology Decoded. And
yes, I've heard of it.
I've got various other astrological books, but the book I use most of all, and I've got about 5 of these, this is a brand new one, is of course
Ephemeris. Yes.
Ephemeris. Now I'm just going to stand up, and I'll be 5 seconds. I'm just going to get something from where I was working yesterday. Bear with me. So, if the person out there who's looking for an astrological reading goes to an astrologer, and the astrologer turns around and goes, "Oh yes, I'll look in my ephemeris," and it's a brand new shiny ephemeris, my advice to that person is to run a mile. That's my ephemeris.
Oh,
yeah, that's what mine looks like. I haven't got a front cover on mine. It's gone.
Right, yeah, battered, bruised, torn, well used, bit like me, but full of magic, and geometry and pattern recognition. And I used to go to bed with a dictionary. Sometimes I went to bed with puzzle magazines. Sometimes now I go to bed with the ephemeris, because I can read, I can see the patterns unfolding as the planets speed up and slow down.
Yeah.
And I can, as I go retrograde, and I can actually see the patterns behind my eyes. And to me, the dance of the planets is, I understand to a certain extent how people like Kepler and Tycho Brahe felt when they were computing the first ever orbits of the planets.
Yes.
It must have been such a revelation to them, because they realized that the universe was a billion times bigger than they'd been led to believe. Just awesome. And I hate using that word, but in this case it's appropriate.
Who was your mentor or teacher or person that you admire the most when you think about astrology and what you've learned?
It's always a hard one.
No one. I'm totally self-taught.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'm dismissive of most astrologers. I run a competition to find the collective term for a group of astrologers. You know, you get a parliament of rooks, you get a herd of cows. I thought, what's the collective term for a bunch of astrologers? And I ran a competition online, and the best one that won was an argument of astrologers. Astrologers don't mate well in captivity. This is why I never go to astrological conferences. I never go to community groups or conferences, unless it's with the MA group that I'm a part of. And I belong to an online academic group called the Journal for the Academic Study of Magic, where we don't practice, but we study the practitioners. But most astrologers, I have a different philosophy than most astrologers. I really do come from a holographic, holistic, integrated way of seeing the planets in the sky, the patterns they make, their orbital speeds around the sun, their distance from the sun, and the perfection of the planetary, of the patterns that they make. I see it as something that's just symbolically representative of a far greater thing, whereas many other astrologers are just concerned around sun columns or individual readings or political statements or being politically correct or whatever. And I don't have time for that. When I started doing readings for individuals around, I don't know, 40 plus years ago, no one was doing readings. No one was an astrologer. And now there's millions of them out there online. And they're what I call the pretty young things. You know, I'm quite dismissive of them without wishing to be too rude, because you've got to start somewhere.
Yes.
And I would encourage I will help anyone I can. If I can help, I will, because I want to get astrology out into the world.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to set myself up as the grand old man of astrology. There's already other people doing that. And some of them are very good friends of mine. But the more you know, the less you know.
Yes.
Yes, that's true.
So when you see these youngsters out there, and by youngsters I mean under 35, no disrespect, who are talking about, oh, because Uranus is here and Venus is here, this means that. And I'm like, oh, no, it doesn't. And you can't contradict or argue, because that's a waste of time. You just have to move on and do the best you can. And so, yeah, there's a few astrologers I have the utmost respect for. Penny Thornton, Rick Levine, and from my MA group, the people who taught me, particularly Nick Campion, who's one of the greatest astrologers. He's right up there in my book with people like Kepler. He'd cringe if he heard me say that. And also, when I was doing the MA, I was literally sat with Liz Green on this side and Bernadette Brady on that side. And these are the gods of astrology.
Yeah.
But and I realized actually they're just human beings, just like you and me.
Yeah. I used to run down to Bernadette's place to get some charts drawn up on her computer, because I had the handwritten away. I wanted them quickly.
Yeah. I mean, for the first 20 years of my life, I did all my charts by hand. I only got my computer in the late 90s. And again, if you can't draw a chart by hand, if you can't calculate a horoscope by hand, then you're not an astrologer. If you need the computer,
I'm about to relearn how to do
it. Yes. When I was teaching some of my students on how to do it, I thought, well, I'll have to brush up on this. I haven't done it for a long time. Things like the acceleration on the interval and things like that. It's like, oh yeah, I remember this. Is it east or west? Is it minus or plus per 4 minutes per degree? And you've got to know it.
Yeah,
you've got to know it. Otherwise, you can't do it properly. Memo to self: need to brush up on this immediately after this interview. Yeah.
In the next book by Steve Judd, when he goes out in his spaceship and flies back into the solar system, what would he put in the book under the meaning of the Earth?
Avoid at all costs.
Right now we don't have much information about that.
I'd say avoid at all costs. Still in a state of growing up.
Especially at the moment.
Especially at the moment. Yeah. I often say to people, what do you think a bunch of highly evolved extraterrestrials in orbit around our planet are going to be saying when they look down on us now? They're going to be
laughing.
They're going to be seeing rampant ego. They're going to be seeing gender wars. They're going to see political posturing.
Yeah.
It's just a messed up planet.
Yeah.
But then in the other paragraph, it says they are evolved on the Earth. What is the meaning then of the Earth?
Well, another way of the alternative to what I've just presented is that when I was 7, I'll be 70 next year. So when I was 7, the height of technology was to have a dial-up telephone on your wall. Yeah. And we had a little wooden box with a flickering black and white television.
Yes.
Spirituality meant going to Sunday school in the morning.
Yeah.
Nowadays, of course, spirituality is everywhere. Technology is, well, look at the way we're communicating now. But also when I was born, and the year I was born, there was 2.1 billion people on this planet. There's now nearly 8. So, you know, everything is accelerating. And it's not just accelerating in a straight line. It's a linear curve. It's accelerating at an exponential rate, which suggests to me that as that acceleratory graph curve, both in population, technology, and spirituality continues to accelerate, that we're heading towards some type of nexus point within the next few years that's going to lead to either some type of really big breakdown or really big breakthrough. And in many ways, I think that this is summing up human history so far.
Yes. Yeah, I'd say maybe even both is the case.
Yes. I mean, every generation has always felt they lived in a golden age, but the acceleration of invention and technology just in the last 30 years has been incredible.
Yes.
It seems archaic that 20 years ago I was on dial-up to get on the internet. You know, to listen to a little beep, 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 beep when you're trying to connect. And now look where we are, just in 2 decades. I mean, I've just embraced AI in my work, but everyone else is scared of AI. I've just thought, well, you got to embrace it. And it's amazing. The stuff I'm doing now with AI in the background, you haven't seen it yet. You wait. I've got some great stuff coming out with using artificial intelligence and allowing it to work in and with me, because it's a whole different, and even then, and then there's the next level, which is yet to come. Advanced AI. It's the future is truly in the imagination at the moment. And when you actually, and to jump forward, and this is backed up by the astrology, because we have never had a time, astrologically speaking, like this, where you've got all of the outer planets about to change sign from feminine to masculine.
Yeah.
And this has never, ever happened before. I've taken it back, and the last time anything like this happened would have been about 10,500 BC. Then, of course, the outer planets, as far as we're aware, weren't known about. So their archetypes weren't recognized in the consciousness. So to me, this is a kind of peak moment, this next few years. And the way we develop our planet and ourselves over the next 2 or 3 years is going to influence the very long-term future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Up to us, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad I'm the age I am.
Yeah, we kind of do. We're not as advanced in age and wisdom as you are, but we're getting there. Yeah.
Well, it's relative. I mean, some of the kids, some of the 20-year-olds I'm working with today, they're so, on the one hand, so dysfunctional and separated from the world, but so intelligent. They're almost like they're ready to download their consciousness into the mainframe.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
The future is very much the idea of was it Deus ex machina, God is in the machine. The genie's out the bottle with the technology. We can't put it back in. We can't put the cork back in. So we've got to embrace it. And if that means not so much genetic modification to avoid the approaching climate chaos, but instead the idea of downloading consciousness or blending consciousness with artificial intelligence in some shape or form without losing our identity and individuality, but by expanding our consciousness in a way that embraces a much greater intuitive, borderline telepathic potential. And to me, that's the only viable future. And of course, that will then lead us into much faster and much greater exploration of the solar system and beyond.
I think that's being spoken about with the fact of Pluto being in Aquarius, the polarity of Leo. I think that's really what it's saying to some degree.
Yeah, very much so. And I find it fascinating that I'm dealing more and more now with people who are going through their Pluto half return and their Neptune opposition and their Uranus return.
Yeah.
You know, people are living a lot longer now. And
yeah.
I used to find that 50% of my clients would be between the age of 41, 42, and 59. But I'm getting so many millennials now. I'm doing so many readings for people born this century. And I'm doing so many readings for people born in the 1940s, even the 1930s, who are still looking for some type of different understanding. Not better or worse, but different.
Yeah.
And astrology is very much what I call this is a catchphrase, the emerging lingua franca of the lingua franca of the emerging consciousness revolution. It's the language of the future.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that, you know, if everyone's going to know their chart within 20 years, everyone. And that is going to see an end to nation states and political parties and gender politics. It's just going to be so much more harmonious. That's the potential.
Yes.
So you're thinking, sort of, if you were to think about 20 years on, that's how you would see it?
That's one version.
Yeah.
The alternative is some type of dystopian cyberpunk state where everything's in total breakdown and chaos. We really are faced with those realities. And there is obviously there's a vested interest in the power blocks of the last few hundred years who are still desperately trying to cling to their power. Whether you see that in terms of religious groups, political groups, the establishment, or basically the people who with the money. None of these are bad people. They're just entrenched in their inherited attitudes of entitlement.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't want to lose it. And I understand that. And they don't have to lose it, but there is a greater sharing coming by necessity. So,
yeah.
I think the solstice at the moment's got something to do with that as well.
Yes.
Venus, Mercury, and Cancer, Sun.
Yes.
And Pluto at the top. Interesting.
For years I've called myself Saturn's boy, and now I'm becoming Pluto's boy. I'm doing so much work on Pluto now with Pluto. Early next year, I'm doing 2 separate gigs, one after the other, where I'm just doing a whole 8-hour day just on Pluto.
Yes.
To groups of a couple of hundred people, and that's looking at its postulation, its discovery, its mythology, the naming of it, its archetypes, and then through the signs and through the houses, its aspects as well as its transits. And of course, you do get certain. I'm not going to name them, but you get certain astronomers who will go, Pluto's smaller than our moon and it's 4 billion miles away. How can it affect us? Don't be stupid. Like,
Yeah.
hello, I've got 20,000 statistics here.
Yes.
And tens of thousands of people to go, oh yeah, Pluto really affected me. And I'd love to get up and debate them with this on national radio or something. I've done it with a few bishops, but I'd love to get a few astronomers up there and argue it with them, because I'm a bit of a punk. You see, when I was 14 when the Beatles split up and Hendrix died, so I was a bit too young to be a hippie, but punk started in 75, 76. I was 20. And all of the leading the punk singers and punk musicians at that time, they're all born within 12 months of me. So I have to own the fact that I'm becoming more and more of a, not the punk astrologer, but because that's a silly title, but the ideas of punk, as in, no, I don't need to take anyone's orders. I don't need to take any nonsense from anyone. I'll do it for myself. And that's how I've lived my life.
That's good though.
Astrology's looked after me. See, I don't see astrology as an it. To me, astrology has valence and life force. And I choose to call astrology a she. And she has looked after me. Without astrology, I'd be dead by now. So can I say this? Yeah, I can.
Go on, say it. Go on, say it.
I'm her bitch. No, she doesn't rule my life. So many times I sit down, clients waiting on the end of a line, and I'm looking at the chart, I'm thinking, I have no idea what I'm going to say. And I just look at the patterns and I open my mouth and the words come out and I think, where the hell did that come from? And I'm not channeling, because I don't do channeling.
No? You don't think about
I don't. The idea of channeling involves some other higher force speaking through you, and that kind of that negates free will. But astrology isn't some type of higher force. It's something that's it's not pervasive, but it's around you all the time. It's a vital, functional part of the everyday world. It's just been conveniently written out by the powers that be over the millennia. Because it offers a different viewpoint than most religion or political systems. Study astrology, you become self-empowered. Simple.
That's why everyone should be studying it.
Exactly. Then what would happen to all the organized systems of power and the planet if everyone became self-empowered?
Oh
well.
Can you imagine that?
Well,
let's find out, shall we?
Let's do that.
Get on to it.
So do you feel that Earth has a place in the universe?
You want to use the word special place or place?
Special place? Yeah, I suppose special place might be a better way of saying it.
I find it a bit coincidental that this lump of rock, perfectly positioned at a distance from the sun, before humans, when the rains were happening for millions and millions of years, they washed all the rock salt from the mountains into the sea and made a saline sea, and then it stopped at 4% salinity. You'd think it would have carried on, and which type of life wouldn't have happened, but it stopped. There's so many coincidences in the evolution of our planet that without all of them, humanity or life as we understand it couldn't have formed. But it does seem to me that there's some type of, not so much higher purpose, but to quote one of the heroes I don't have, and I know one of the questions you asked me, is there anyone that I would like to meet who's no longer around? And I did think about this, and I thought there's only one. And that's a guy called Terence McKenna, who's, in my book, one of the greatest humans who's ever lived. He said, quote, Human history represents such a radical break to the systems of biological organization that preceded it, that it must be being pulled forward by some type of attractor or dwell point that lies ahead in the temporal dimensions. There's something pulling us forward to evolve. We're unlike any other species that's ever lived on this planet. No other species on this planet has ever had self-reflective consciousness, can recognize itself in mirrors, can laugh at itself, maybe cats. But, you know,
Cats.
we're so different from any other form of life that's ever existed on this planet. And this planet's been around 6 billion years, and we've been around
not very long.
0.1% of that.
Mm.
You know, when people say to me, when did astrology start? And I say, well, go back a million years, not a billion, a million. 0.01% of the length of the earth. And some hominid on the East African plain got off its knuckles and stood upright. And then it became dusk at night, and they looked up and they went, oh, wow, what's that? And then over the next millennia, they saw these lights moving slowly. And they realized that there were lights in the sky that were moving against the backdrop of the stars, planets. So they started making stories, myth, to try and explain it. And this is where we get our archetypes from. So astrology's been there from the very dawn, or our relationship with the cosmos and the desire to make sense of the heavens above us in some type of interrelation has been there since the dawn of human history. And long may that continue.
Yes, yeah. So going off on a little bit of a tangent, but not so much, is the question about geomancy and your interest in geomancy, because obviously energy grids and the geomancy picture is influencing what's happening on this planet too, isn't it?
Everything's got pattern.
Yes.
When I was doing my master's degree in cultural astronomy and astrology, one of the things I studied was the accuracy of the so-called ley lines that run through the city of Bath in southwest England, because Bath allegedly has more ley lines than most other cities in the world. So I thought, okay, I had this brand new tool at the time called Google Earth. And I was able to climb towers with theodolites and measure accurately. And I was aware of about 9 or 10 so-called ley lines that passed through the city of Bath. And I managed to realize that 6 or 7 of them were just, no, they weren't accurate. But there were 2 or 3 that were accurate to within 3 feet over 10 miles that linked Roman chapels with Victorian churches and the center of the abbey, and then churches over a hill, down a valley, over another hill from 500 years ago. And some of these were exactly straight. Now, this doesn't imply some type of grand plan or some type of long-term conspiracy, because humans aren't that intelligent. But it does suggest that over the millennia, humans have subconsciously reacted to a kind of inbuilt plan on the Earth's surface of some type of geometric pattern. Now, if I ever finish my PhD, which is probably never going to happen, it's on crop circle phenomena, because I've been in hundreds and hundreds of crop circles since 1989, and the absolute millimeter precision or accuracy of these things defies any type of logical, rational explanation.
Yeah.
And to me, this is all linked with the patterns on the Earth, the structures in various different rock and crystal formations. Everything relates to geometry and pattern. Everything. And if we could get out of our brain enough to be able to resonate with the harmonies and the disharmonies of those patterns, we'd be able to tune in on those frequencies to those energies and actually be able to flow with them, to be able to surf them, and to be able to not so much channel them, but to be able to work with them, to flow with them.
Yeah.
And then the whole world has changed overnight.
We work with frequency too, with sounds, but we also use crystals. You've got quite a big crystal collection, haven't you?
Here we go.
That is full. I spend, everybody else buys crypto or puts their money in stocks and shares. I buy crystals. I'm quite comfortable about spending a large amount of money on crystals because I have no idea what any of them do. I'm not a crystal healer. I don't know what any of them do. I just know that I like them. They like me. You know, so I'm not averse to spending, I don't know, 1,000 Australian dollars on a lump of rock with a very unusual structure about it, simply because I know it feels good to me. I don't try and define it. I just like it, and that's enough.
Does it feel good because of the energy or the frequency that you feel from it when you hold it?
I think it's got more to do with the structure of its pattern. Like there's certain crystals that are, if you, for example, with normal standard clear quartz, if you shine a light through quartz, the light will come out the other side or refract at 90 degrees. Whereas I've got a big ruby about that size. And if you shine a light through, ruby is hexagonal. It's got a lot of triangles and hexagons in its structure. So if you shine a light into a ruby, it starts going around and it creates a circular pattern inside the ruby. And then when it comes out in a number of different directions at once. So there's, I still don't know what they do, but I can guess that they emanate different types of light, different types of frequency, which affect us at a subliminal level. And they just bring joy into my life.
Yeah.
So who am I? I'm not even going to try and understand it. My brain's too small, but I know that I like it and I can dance with it.
That's good. That's excellent.
So this is another personal comment you'd like to make to us. What's your favorite sign and planet in your chart?
I was born with the exact opposition of the moon and Mercury. I have Mercury smack on my Gemini midheaven and the moon on my IC in Sagittarius. The only planet that doesn't get any challenging aspects in my chart is Saturn. And I've always had I'm not going to dare to say a good relationship with Saturn, a respectful relationship with Saturn. But I love my moon. I love my moon in Sagittarius. It gives me a big mouth. It doesn't make me subtle, tactful, or diplomatic, but it creates a simplicity. I love simple. To me, the shortest distance between 2 points is always a straight line. And if you and there's a basic philosophy with the moon in Sagittarius that says that if you always tell the truth, then you never have to remember what you said. And I like that simplicity. So yeah, my moon is just my favorite planet.
And just one more. And what have you found fascinating in somebody else's chart that you don't see very often as far as planet and sign?
Yesterday, I was dealing with a young lady, 33-year-old, who was born with Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius and the ascendant at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and the sun on the midheaven at 25 and 26 degrees of Scorpio. And I was thinking, okay, so this year you've got Uranus in the sky opposite your sun, opposite your midheaven, and you've got Pluto on top of your Saturn, and you've got Pluto on your ascendant. And I was so grateful that this person was astrologically knowledgeable. She spent 5 years immersing herself in astrology because it was the only thing that helped her make sense of herself. She'd been in and out of care homes. She'd been abused. She'd been in various institutions. And then then astrology found her. And because people don't find astrology, astrology finds people. And it found her, and she chose to take on, to work with it. And all of a sudden, she has no idea yet how empowered she is. But she's going to make an absolutely brilliant astrologer. And to me, it's like the horoscope is just a blueprint of potential. But in it, buried within it, are certain trigger points that, when activated by transits in the sky, produce such a moment of evolution in the individual. It's like watching a caterpillar change into a butterfly, or a flower suddenly open. And to me, that is just the alchemy, the magic of astrology. So to me, this is the true nature of astrology, because it empowers the individual to rise out of and beyond all types of negative conditioning and imprinting from youth, and to become far more than they ever thought they were capable of doing. And what better thing to do with one's life?
To be able to understand yourself and why circumstances have unfolded for you at that age is incredible. Wow, that's amazing.
Yes. I notice also in your questions, one of the questions that you said to me, how much does gratitude play in your life?
Next question.
And I've never really, because of my sort of punkish upbringing, I've never really thought about gratitude until comparatively recently. But the idea of, I'm not grateful to anyone apart from my mum for giving birth to me, but the gratitude that I feel towards the unqualifiable, unquantifiable, but pervasive force that empowers this planet in the search for meaning. I hesitate to use the word magic because it's a vastly misunderstood word. But there is a power that could be described as alchemical or magical that's around us all the time, that most of us have been conditioned out of recognizing. You know, the churches have over the millennia have dumbed us down. And now we're beginning to wake up and realize that we are far more than we've been led to believe. We're all born psychic, just have it hammered out of us.
That's right.
And now we're beginning to really wake up. And to me, the gratitude I have for that life force that's freely available if you open your eyes to it, it's just amazing. But you can't teach this. You can't say to people, here you are, this is what you do. They have to learn through their own direct experience. There is no other way. They have to do it for themselves. And for many people, it's a journey too far. It's like when Pluto strikes. There's me on the one hand saying, right, this is really going to hurt now for a couple of years. And you're going to get trashed and you wish you would die. And it's going to be really, really painful. And it's going to be, you're going to be terrorized. And they're going, I'm not going down into those caves at the bottom of my soul. There's monsters down there. I'm going, you are. It's just a question of whether you do it willingly or kicking and screaming. And then at the end of it, I say, but if you choose to do this willingly, you will come out of this psychologically invulnerable for the rest of your life. You'll become more empowered than you ever thought possible, because you would have faced all of your ghosts, all of your fears, and you would have dealt with it. And that's just one example of how astrology works. You have to embrace it as a living thing, as a valent thing. And there's an almost shamanistic quality to it. And if you bring it alive, if you make it something that people can react with at a daily level, they become much more engaging with it. It's not just something that they read in the newspapers on the sun sign columns.
Yeah, they want to explore it to find out more about themselves. Yeah.
Okay. I've got
one more question.
Yeah.
One more question. What does the word love mean to you?
Amor. What does love mean to me? Love means to me when I know I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, there's that feeling of just swimming in very thin, warm honey. It's that feeling that I'm doing exactly what I volunteered to come here to do. That I'm on course, I'm in tune, I'm doing the universe's work.
Yeah.
I am love. I am loved. And I can love. And to me, that is I'm already way off planet with this one. I don't want to come across as hippy dippy, but it is the single most empowering force in this universe.
It is, and that's definitely the correct answer. Well done.
Tick.
Well, comes from the heart.
That's right.
Yeah, the value of the heart is love, and love is the value.
Yes.
What a wonderful way to end.
Yes. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak to us today. Hopefully we can catch up with you again another time. But thank you for all that you do, your wonderful work on YouTube and all the other things that you do too. And when we get an opportunity to come to the UK, we'd love to see you.
Yes, we would.
Thank you.